I feel older than that today. Yesterday and today I've had a stiff.
We'd like to call this meeting for the Jacksonville Planning Advisory Board on July 8th to order. At this time, will please stand and Al Keys will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Steve Forney in the invocation.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this blessed day. We thank you for all the blessings that you have given to us. We ask that you give us the wisdom to actually come to wise choices as we do our civic duties here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, at this time, if you'll take a look at the agenda, if there are no corrections or additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda, a motion to approve would be in order.
I move that we approve the agenda.
A motion by Ms. Vanderveer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Forney. Any questions? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes. Now you've got the agenda from the May 13th meeting. Anybody have a problem with that meeting in minutes as presented? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve the minutes
We have a motion.
of May 13th.
Motion by Mr. Forney to approve the minutes as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keys. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes. Ooh, City Council update. Councilman Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our May 21st meeting, we approved that UDO amendments to allow building contractors to be in the B1 zone and made some modifications. We basically, whatever y'all came up with, we basically did the same thing. I think the only real contention, I think, even here was over whether we should screen it. And if we should screen it, how do we do it? And we basically have allow a chain link fence or vegetation, where we did allow vegetation to be a screen like a buffer, similar to what we do in different zonings, where one abuts another, a different type of zoning, where we have a vegetative buffer of about 30 feet or so, I guess.
That's right.
So we did approve that. So hopefully we corrected a lot of non-conforming zoning issues that we had in the city with that amendment. And then at our June 18th workshop, we talked about lighting standards. Stantec was also there, and they gave us a presentation on the Joint Land Use Study Program, the JLUS. You may be familiar with that. That's is commissioned by Onslow County, and they bring the stakeholders. The main function of that is to make sure that the city, the county, and all the other municipalities in the county, as well as the base, are all kind of in agreement, so that we try to do what we can to protect the base as far as their training mission. Some of the things that we do already. We do the dark lighting, where we don't allow up lighting on parking lots and signs and so forth. The use of we have a flight zone area that we don't allow cell towers above a certain height and so forth and so on. So those sort of things. But anyway, it's been, how many years had it been since it's been updated? Do you remember? 15 years or something? 10 years maybe?
I believe 15.
Might have been 15, I think it was. So anyway, Stantec just completed the draft plan of that, so that we continue to make sure that all of Onslow County is working together to help each other economically, and also look out for our biggest economic engine in Onslow County. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if anybody has any questions, if not, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, there being no old business, we'll go right to new business. Jeremy, you're up today. You're the man in charge.
Ryan apologizes for not being able to be here tonight. He is dealing with summertime strep. He was diagnosed today, so.
Summertime strep.
I was on vacation last week, and I was thankfully able to make it back in time to stand in his place. Well, Ryan and I work like that. He's the supervisor, but we are able to play off of each other like that. I mean, we are working on the same items all the time. As mentioned before, City Council discussed this at their last month's workshop, and this board discussed it in the May meeting as a workshop. This is a proposed amendment to our exterior lighting and correction of non-conforming site features, dealing also with lighting. Again, just to highlight on some of the things we discussed, that this amendment is addressing multiple issues, the retrofitting of existing site lighting. We evaluated the ordinance. We worked with Duke Energy and Jones Onslow EMC. Then we moved to that decision to propose amendment after going through the workshop with the planning board and city council. And we drafted an amendment. It's here in front of you, and we will be taking it to city council in their August meeting. The proposed language for this amendment deals with lighting fixture replacements or retrofits, and that they shall comply with these standards to the maximum extent practical. That maximum extent practical gives us some flexibility dealing with existing developments and how they handle site lighting. One of the big things is with this proposed ordinances, we are introducing that U rating, part of the bug rating, where you have a certain measurement of the type of fixture. We have exemptions currently in the ordinance, and we are adding those. Obviously, airport runway and those for aviation safety are exempt. Temporary holiday lighting displays and street lighting, and that's any lights within the right of way. Also exempt are lighting of official government flags, and then those dealing with emergency situations, be it a construction site or where you have a site that's under duress. We continue to find lighting that does not fit within character of the city, so we have proposed language to prohibit certain lighting. We already restrict animated flashing and the revolving, and so we're going forward and adding some language about high intensity light beams, such as the large searchlights and strobe lights. And as technology advances, we have to kind of stay ahead of that curve. This is the backlight, uplight, glare, the bug rating, as I was talking about before. This is amendments for illumination direction. Again, exemptions deal with architectural lighting. That's your uplighting, where you don't see the bulb. It's kind of lighting the building. It's not going above and beyond the potential to alter the military mission or other aircraft, U.S. flags. Your decorative post tops, that's down lighting, usually when you have fence posts or walls that have lighting that will kind of do a small silhouette of area around those fences and walls. This is one of the bigger changes because we're trying to comply with what's available from our local power providers, and that's changing the standards for pole heights from 16 to 16 feet to 18 feet, and change 25 to 30 for all other districts. And this just falls in line with what type of poles and pole heights that are readily available with our local utilities. What we were finding in the past, when a site had to comply with our current heights, they were having a special order and no longer could contract with our local utilities to maintain those lights because they were not their poles. This is an amendment that goes for our design standards, and this is maximum illumination levels. Currently, we have that 0.2 foot candles at the property line, but we've eliminated that It kind of goes along with the bug rating that we were discussing before, and also address those instances where you may have multiple separate parcels that are owned by the same owner or developer, and there is no restriction in lighting in between those commonly owned properties. And then there's our typical fixes in the ordinance where we find that it was designating the planning and inspection or development services director, and in order not to have to amend that every time a title changes, it's basically the city manager and his or her designee. This deals with our non-conforming situations. This is amendments to bring sites into compliance when they meet those thresholds of remodeling or expansions within a given time period, or expanding beyond a threshold of their tax value of their building, just like we do with landscaping and parking right now. If they were to remodel, and the cost for their building permit was to exceed 25% of their tax value, then they would have to work on some compliance with their exterior lighting component. Expansions also deal with the 25%, but they are 25%, 50%. And once you end up doubling the size of a building, you're coming to the 100% compliance. Again, we discussed this at length at the May meeting. The board at that time seemed very favorable. We have not altered anything. We've just updated the ordinance per that. And staff is recommending approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or discuss with any issues the board has.
Anyone have any questions? I know staff's put a lot of legwork into
It has
this.
been a long time coming. Ryan has been worked, I would say, at least the last year, and just back and forth traffic with Jones Onslow with some of their staff members in order to make sure what we were carrying forward is something that they as a public utility can support, but at the same time meeting what the city wants to do. I failed to mention that at the council workshop when discussed, as Councilman Warden said, that this does continue to support that military mission that falls under the J-Luce, the dark sky standards of keeping the light pollution in the vertical situation at a minimum.
This was an additional comment of some of the things that we as a city are doing. They're actually gonna take that and use that as a template for various other municipalities, Holly Ridge and Swansboro and Richlands, to make sure that they don't have any interference, primarily with some of the flight paths and so forth that they continue to use. So, and some of our things that we do, I guess, are relatively unique to Onslow County. So,
Will this bring some non-compliance people into compliance?
It will, and this isn't a bad thing. It makes some of our other sites that adhere to our current standards exceed the ordinance. So if the developers, this is just kind of an outshoot anytime you amend the ordinance, they could come back and say, hey, we've got these 25-foot poles here, but now we'd like to go taller. Can we, it gives them that ability. But yes, this could, I couldn't tell you site specifically, but it should alleviate or relax some issues that sites have.
What about structures? There's a few structures here that's 3, 4, 5 stories high. Does it have anything to do with this?
No, they would still have to meet these same standards. Generally, when you have those tall structures, their biggest issue with compliance is the uplighting. But we haven't had any tough to deal with. I think some of the issues have come up where you've had some of your hotels and at night they've had a spotlight instead of traditional building up lighting, and that spotlight doesn't get directed at the building, it suddenly shoots straight up in the air, and we'll be addressing that through this amendment.
Very good. Any other questions?
I commend the planning for putting this together. I'm well aware of when a lot of this started, and it has been a long, long time. And I commend you for all the work that's been done to put this together as a usable document.
Any other questions? If not, then Chair would entertain a motion. Somewhere. Steve?
I recommend that we, as the planning board, recommend that this be approved by council.
In attachment A.
Attachment A, yes.
So we have a motion from Mr. Forney, second by Dr. Lasan. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes.
Thank you.
And now it's time for your report.
Ryan did want me to mention that as of July 1st this year, with the adoption of the new fee schedule, we have introduced a zoning permit fee. It's always been built into our, into the fee schedule, but never collected. It was part of the building permit review. It was folded into that. But as we've explored the last year, zoning is an increasingly bigger component of plan review. And so now any permit that requires zoning review will have an additional $50 tacked onto it. And this will also go for our driveway permits and our flood development review permits. So that was introduced in it's more money on the permits, but it's money well spent because the zoning component is, we spend a lot of time on zoning compliance.
Any questions?
So when I have my driveway upgraded, I'll have to pay $50?
Yes, sir. Driveways was one of the, and not to use the term double like this, was one of the driving components of this this issue because we did not have a fee on driveway permits. But it was actually one of the ones that required some more in-depth review in terms of your distances from the property line. How large is your existing driveway? Are you adding a second driveway? Because we do have restrictions on the amount of driveway that can take up your road frontage. Basically, the ordinance gets us away from those old commercial and residential lots where it was nothing but driveway. And then we also have to do some impervious surface review with stormwater, so.
Plus, if you increase your driveway, property taxes go up a little bit.
Do you have any knowledge of how much work has been completed after the hurricane that they had to get permits for?
I do not have those numbers readily in my mind. We will get that to you and we'll send it out
Well,
on the
it's
email.
just interesting to
Yeah,
know
I'm
how
sure.
much people are still
Not as
working.
many tarps around, not as many
No,
tarps around. there as there
obviously, going September will be a year.
Yeah,
was.
To look at what we were 30 days after the hurricane versus now, we're definitely in a better situation. But we're probably due for another update with council at a workshop, but staff has been regularly updating. One of the last big updates is when the debris contractor finished up their work and kind of moved on to the county to finish up their obligations there. And the city sanitation crews have been, I think, assisting with the other debris that may be coming up. I do see a number of trees still hanging down. A lot of that comes onto the property owner, just taking the responsibility of, the city if they're on the city trash service, the city stands ready to assist in pickup. They just need the work of taking it down and piling it up.
that was a very good film they showed at the dinner.
Yes.
That was very interesting. Who put that together?
I would applaud our media department because I'm sure they threw together with a lot of the work with the Department of Public Safety and our transportation division.
By the way, we now have a drone.
Yep.
Oh,
City purchased a drone and we just approved last month that drone drone policy on how it can be deployed. So
Oh,
trying to tread that careful line between privacy and
and what are they going to use it
Overlooking
for
things.
mainly?
Yeah.
What is it?
I think probably number one will be used maybe in sewer line. We have some remote sewer lines that nobody gets back to them except every so often, and sometimes when they get back there to them, they find they've been leaking for a while. So that's going to be one of them. Another one would be police. If they have an issue where they need to put a drone up, as you know, we don't have a helicopter like you see on these big cities, but maybe a drone to help find somebody. And maybe the third one I can think of would be something like National Night Out. Go up and maybe come up with a better idea of how many people are there than just trying to guess, looking at the mass of people around you. Which, by the way, is coming up August the 6th. I think you saw that on the doors when you came in. So our next big community-wide festival is August 6th, National Night Out. So come on down
Who knows how to
downtown.
use the drone, to operate the drone?
There, you have to have an FAA, Federal Aviation Administration license for drone.
Okay.
What do they call it? Remote. They don't call it a drone. It's a.
But I think that's
remote
only
operation.
if you're gonna be flying it in excess of 400 feet.
Yes.
And-
Well,
and-
I think our policy will be that in order
And
to fly the
policy's
city, you
different.
will have to have the license. I think we have 2 people right now and 2 more that are in the process. One of them, I believe, is a police officer. I'm not sure where the other gentleman or lady is from. But, we've got us a drone. And it all depends on the type of drone.
Yeah.
You can buy a recreational drone, it doesn't require it, but we have a commercial drone
Yeah.
or whatever that triggers the FAA regulations. So we have to have a licensed operator and a licensed observer. You can't just have just one, it takes 2 people to operate that. Somebody has to physically observe it and the other person flies it, so, yeah. I learned, we
My
learned
son's
some
got it.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Maybe one day
interesting.
our packets will be delivered by drone.
Yeah, wouldn't that be
Yeah,
nice?
how about that?
I would see another use for it too, is if, somebody reporting some damaged property.
That's a good,
Do a flyover.
we would certainly use it we'd use it after Florence,
Yeah, there's been-
most definitely, that's a very
Been a lot of
good, very good
discussion on
point.
that you used, it could have been in some of
Yeah.
the areas you couldn't get to because the
Yeah.
fallen trees are still high water.
Well, in fact, there's still several huge trees over Soku Creek, heading up into Northwoods.
We go around and check all your
They
easements.
halfway blocked in there.
Yeah, well, it
Keep-
does,
yeah,
like
keep it
today,
Clear.
Yeah.
some of
All
the
your
blossoms.
easements.
And neighbor's doing the best he can to get it out piece by piece, but there's a couple big trees up there, yeah. In fact, it'd be hard for even heavy machinery, unless we're talking tracked machinery, to get down into there.
So I got a message from Ryan.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to hold y'all just a little longer. With the July 1st coming, nominations and the election of chair and vice chair. So,
You mean, is that this
yeah, it will be for the
next meeting?
We'll vote now and it'll take effect next meeting.
Okay.
It's just,
We need to vote tonight?
I thought that was,
he's asking
I thought
me
we just
to,
did that,
I thought it was 2-year terms.
I did too, I thought we just did it, but.
There's 2 year?
he's,
It's 1 year,
They can-
renewable 1 year.
Okay,
1 year and renewable.
renewable 1 year, okay.
Okay. So I'll move that we renew it for 1 year.
I second
I second.
Keep
that.
them in
We have a
place.
motion to keep things the same for next year. And a second.
And a second. And all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it seems to be unanimous to not change.
Nobody likes change.
If it's broke, don't fix it.
I was worried there for a minute there, we weren't having so many meetings, and I'm thinking, well, gee, I'll be chairman for a whole year, we won't have any meetings, but we've been pretty good lately. I will say one thing, on our, streets department. About 3 weeks ago, there was a sinkhole or a pothole or something like that happening in my court, and I went online and put that information in online, I swear it was either that day or the next day, there was a streets vehicle out there, and the very next day, that thing was patched. And so,
Good.
that was.
That's always good.
that's
Always
pretty
good to hear.
It was quick service.
And that's one of those, going back to the drone thing, that's the kind of thing that I envision, that can work, if possibly, we're a few years out, but you may have that ability, even in the inspection side, we've talked about. Could you make an inspection with a drone one day? Very possible. I know some cities have used them, getting into the duct systems and whatnot. But, you can't get an inspector out there now, so we'll send our drone and make a camera inspection. But with road work like that, inspecting potholes, saying, hey, we can get out here, and a camera can do a lot of things depending on the technology, observing depth and how much needs to be filled, or if there's a bigger issue.
I would imagine that it could also give you a pretty good picture of an area when you're looking at somebody, for example, sidewalks. We have a concern sometimes because when someone refurbishes something and we make them dig up the old sidewalk and put in a wider one, and they come back and say, well, my sidewalk's going nowhere because the next place doesn't have one, and you have to drive out there to see it. But when you can take an overall view and see that if you can get these two properties, you'll have a continuous sidewalk, then it beats driving along and making notes.
That's right.
And you can get that snapshot a little more currently.
I suspect as they start using it, they'll find more and more uses for that, so.
Okay, well, you've
That's
been
all I
very
have.
productive. Thank you, Brian. So, any other business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Forney, second
Second.
by Mr. Keys. Motion. Meeting
Thank
adjourned.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.